Good morning, everyone. We see you come in there. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Julie Baker. I'm the Executive Director of Californians for the Arts, and we are here for a wonderful webinar on crisis engagement. And I just wanted to first thank our co-sponsors on putting this webinar together, SV Creates, Theater Bay Area, and Arts Orange County. So thank you to all of them for bringing Matt Lehrman into our midst. And hi, Matt. Good morning. How are you?
Great, Julie. Good morning. Thanks for being here. Thanks for having me here.
You bet. So we're just watching as participants are coming in, and give it a little bit of time as people roll into their morning Zoom session, as it were. But let me go ahead then and introduce Matt so everyone knows who our wonderful presenter is today. Our presenter is Matt Lehrman of Social Prosperity Partners, and we've invited Matt to share 12 tasks to sustain donors in turbulent times. His presentation is scheduled for 24 minutes, so that's really efficient. Thank you for that, Matt. And will be followed by a Q&A session. Please take a moment now to notice the question chat box on your webinar screen. You are invited to type in your questions or comments there anytime during the presentation or after, as we'll engage Matt in an extended conversation directly following his remarks. If you want to, in the chat box, introduce yourself, and if you want to ask the questions in the Q&A box, we find that's the most efficient. Later today, a video recording of this webinar will be available, so if you find this presentation helpful, we invite you to share it with your team, your board of directors, and your friends and colleagues. All right, so let's begin. Here's Matt Lehrman.
Good morning, Julie. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here this morning, bright and early. Let me answer the first question that you're going to have at the end of this, which is we're about to go through a ton of information, a whole lot of slides. Can you get a copy of these slides afterwards? The answer is yes. You can do it now or at any time afterwards. If you're watching this on a rebroadcast at your convenience, you can do this at any time. Just take out your cell phone and text the word tasks, T-A-S-K-S, to the number 66866. It'll put a little hyphen in it in your phone. Don't worry about it. Text the word tasks to 66866 and you'll get a bounce back that'll ask you for your email address. When you send your email address in, you'll quickly get an email that has all of these slides in it. Let's get into our crisis engagement topic today. We are going to talk about 12 tasks to sustain donors in turbulent times. Now, we are in a moment of disruption, of stress, and of probably prolonged uncertainty. We're all experiencing it for ourselves, for our families, for our organizations. And so this presentation intends to be appropriate to this moment, which is I'm not coming to you with a brand new paradigm for how to do everything in the world, because there's an adage that says you can't teach someone who's drowning how to swim. So we're not going to do anything groundbreaking here. Hopefully everything here makes complete sense. You're already doing this, and we're just going through the process to make sure that you're filling in all the gaps and you haven't missed anything along the way. This moment that we're in is not the new normal. We will know that we're in the new normal when we feel some sense of stability in the moment. We can organize our resources for the immediate future, and we can plan for the long-term future. But this is not that moment. This is what I'm going to call the raw normal. And in the raw normal, everything is uncertain, and our job is to understand what's going on a minute-by-minute basis, to make adjustments on the fly, and we should just be happy to survive the day. So the approach to this presentation is kind of like if you were a first responder or an emergency room physician or someone in the military who faces a crisis and says, I didn't even think about it, my training kicked in and I knew what to do. These are 12 tasks that are intended to help you kick in. We're going to present this as an espresso shot. So I'm going to do my best to get through this in 24 minutes, 12 tasks. It's interesting, but hopefully it's also actionable for you. And at the end of these 24 minutes, I will decaffeinate, we'll calm down, we'll take a breath, and we'll just do Q&A for as long as you want to have that conversation. So here are 12 tasks. We are looking at through the lens of donor and supporter relationships, which is to say that many of you have responsibilities for facilities and budgets and team management and other things. you need a different presentation with 12 tasks for each of them. We're just going to focus on this one focus right now. So here's task number 1. It's about taking care of yourself, and it's about adopting a mantra. My task for you is to make this your mantra: inward, outward, forward. Just go ahead and say it out loud. I know I can't hear you, but you will feel better just to say it. Inward, outward, forward. What we mean by this mantra is that people who run nonprofit organizations are used to carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders, and that's in good times. In tough times like this, you need to get yourself into a mindset. And inward means that you're going to take care of yourself. You're going to eat right, you're going to exercise, you're going to sleep, you're going to communicate with your family and friends and with your neighbors around you. Outward means that we're going to be mindful of how we present ourselves to our team and our volunteers and our board and even to our beneficiaries. Forward means that we're going to become purposeful about how we advance what we're doing in front of our donors and supporters and stakeholders. And I suggest this mantra because if you have a basic structure to go to and you keep working your way through it on a continual basis, you will find gaps. And where you find gaps, you will find opportunities to move yourself and move your organization forward. And I'm going to show you as an example of myself. As I was preparing this presentation, I found a gap. My wife and I had moved into our house about 1.5 years ago. We had sold our longtime house and downsized. We knew our neighbors on the street to wave to them, but we didn't have names and or contact information. They certainly didn't have ours. I quickly dashed off a letter and taped it to the front doors of the 10 houses all around us that basically said, hey, we're home, we're friendly, and we're always willing to help. And we gave them our name, our email address, our cell phone numbers, our home landline, and just said, if you need us, we're here. And a whole bunch of people responded. I put it on social media, hashtag 10 neighbors, and all of a sudden it got picked up. It even turned into a television thing, which is incredible. But it was just a little gesture to let our neighbors know who we are and that we're here. And that's what I mean about finding the gaps. This is why that inward, outward, forward mantra can be so helpful to you. This is task number 2. This is a moment in which you're going to deliver actual care to your team members. And I want you to think about it this way. In good times, if you think about Maslow's hierarchy, in good times, our team members, they take care of their own basic needs, and we help them with their psychological needs. You know, we make them feel a sense of belonging. But really, we rely on those things being met to achieve the unity of purpose that is the function of whatever is our nonprofit organization. Well, in this moment, it's appropriate to invert the pyramid and to say, we have to deliver actual care, not just empathy. This is not just an email that says we feel for you or, you know, let us know if we can help. That's too passive in this moment. Actual care means that we can't assume that the psychological needs are being taken care of, which means we need to call people and have direct conversations with them, probably phone or online teleconferences like this, and ask them, how do you feel in this moment? And I'm here for you, and let's talk. And we need to go even deeper, and we can't assume that basic care is there because we have team members who are immunocompromised, who are at risk in other ways, and shouldn't be going out to grocery stores and the like, which means that we can't assume that food and water and toilet paper and all the other basics in life are there. Delivering actual care to our team is critically important in this moment. We have to make it our core mission to focus downward and support our team. This is task number 3. This is a moment in which we need to mobilize our volunteers. And look, in good times, our volunteers are a community of purpose. They understand our mission. They help us advance the work that we do, and we love them for that, and we rely on them. So obviously, we have to keep them informed as our programs are changing. That's obvious. You're probably already doing that. But one further step with your volunteers. This is an ideal moment to activate them as not just a community of purpose, but as a community of care. And that's that inversion of the pyramid again. If you haven't done this already, I suggest you just reach out and contact 3 or 4 of your best volunteer activists. Now, if they're really good, and I suspect that they are, they're probably already doing this on their own. But just in case, this is your opportunity to say, why don't we contact all of the folks who have volunteered for us currently? And let's even go back in time. If you volunteered for us a year ago, or 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, or even further, let's set up a massive phone tree. Let's go back and call and say, how are you doing? And do you need any help? And let's make that help personal and proactive and practical. You know, we often know the quote that we attribute to Maya Angelou that says that people will forget what you said and they'll forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And this is one of those moments where, with your volunteers especially, you need to make them feel that you are really looking out for them, that you care for them as much as in good times they care for you. And I have no science to back me up on this, but I'm going to make an expectation that the care that you give to your volunteers today is going to come back tenfold to you when things turn around and they're ready to get back to the job of being a community of purpose. That's the investment that we have to make today. This is task number 4. It's about safeguarding your donor management systems. And there are 2 aspects of this I want to mention. The first is simply about security. And I hope that you have backed up your information. And if you haven't backed it up in multiple ways, in multiple places, now is the time to do that. You know, we are in an unimaginable situation. There's just no other way to say it. So when it comes to security, you just need to stretch yourself just a little bit further and think about some of the other unimaginables that might happen. What if the person you rely on to be able to pull reports and update your donor management system, what if that person is sick and can't access the system for a few days or a week or a month or longer? Who else has the training to do that? Who else has the access and knows how to pull those reports? But let's go even further. What happens if the server that you need access to is unavailable because the home in which it's located or the office that it's located in is contaminated and you can't get access to it? What if something happened with your online provider and you couldn't reach them on the internet? So I'm not just talking about having an electronic backup, I'm talking about having a physical backup of your documents as well, so that nothing can fall through the cracks. And ask me about it in the Q&A. I ran a nonprofit organization where we got broken into one night and our computer server was stolen. And we had to send out that email the next day to everyone. We didn't have any credit card information, but we had to send out the notice that said, hey, someone hacked someone has access to our system, that has to our information. And if someone calls you looking for stuff, it's not us. You don't want to be that organization in this moment. That's why security is so important. Hey, related to that, you're fundraising in this moment. Obviously, you've got credit card transactions going, you've got mail coming in, you're depositing those. Whatever the control systems are, whatever are your accounting policies, and I hope you have written accounting policies, but even if you don't, now is the time to document what the ideal process is supposed to be and adhere to it, and to make sure that someone is responsible for quality control. This point I can't emphasize enough. In times of crisis, you don't compromise on your fundamental processes, you rely on them. I'm going to say it again. You rely on your fundamental processes. This is not an excuse to get sloppy and lazy about it, because if you screw it up now, 2 weeks from now, a month from now, you're going to have to send out some sort of notice that's going to make people feel insecure about donating to you. You don't want that in the way of the important fundraising for which you're responsible right now. This is task number 5. It's the one that everyone says, I thought this was going to be task number 1, but we needed to do those other things first, but now you are ready to call your largest donors. And the largest donors, generally, I'm thinking of that 80-20 rule, the one that says 20% of your donors give 80% of your funds. So this is the one person in your organization who is appropriate, who has the relationship to make a phone call that is genuine and sensitive and singular. These people should not be getting multiple phone calls from multiple people in your organization. One phone call that is impactful. And people keep asking me, well, but what do we say? I mean, there's so much uncertainty. What do we say? I'm offering you here a sequence of 3 questions. The first is, how are you doing? How's your family? I mean, it's a basic human question. And some people are going to say, we're fine. And some people are going to say, we're worried. And some people are going to be off the deep end, and that's okay. If they're off the deep end and if they're worried, stop there. Your conversation is done. Just check in with them, be with them, and that's it. But if they're doing okay, then you're ready for the second question, which is, so what's your sense of the future? And again, some people will be optimistic, some will be pessimistic, a lot of people will be in the middle, will be uncertain, I don't know. And your job isn't to change their mind. Your job is simply to meet them where they are. And if you can meet them where they are, you then have the opening to proceed to the third question, which is, where do you see needs or opportunities for our organization to be of even greater service in this moment and going forward? And I want you to notice that the question that I'm suggesting for you is not a negative question purposefully. We're not asking a question like, wouldn't it be terrible if we went out of business? Wouldn't it be terrible if we had to lay off all of our team? Wouldn't it be terrible if we had to shut down all, these important programs that we're doing? I know you're feeling those kinds of things, but I want you to think about the emotional seed that you're planting with the donor as you're reaching out to them in this moment. And I want you to think about what that emotional seed is going to feel like the next time you make a phone call to them and they see your name on the caller ID and they look at you and they're going to associate you with something. And if it's a negative question that you ask in this first moment, that negativity is going to stay going forward. But if you ask questions, where do we see needs, or where are there needs or opportunities that we can fulfill going forward, then they're going to see you as the solution, the bright spot, the hope, the opportunity for the future. That's the emotional seed that you're looking to plant in this very first phone call. It's very rare that the donor is just going to make a pledge to you right here. This is an ongoing dialogue that you're about to deal with. Once you've talked with your big donors, you're of course ready to talk to all of your donors, and you need to inform them and involve them. You've clearly already done the first thing. You've advised them of the closings and the changes and the cancellations. Hopefully you've put a footnote somewhere. I've been advising this to everyone. Put a footnote on everything with a link to the Centers for Disease Control so that everyone is continually pointed to factual scientific data. But the most important messages that you can send to your donors, I think, fall under 2 categories generally, at least in this initial moment. The first is about continuity of purpose. Those are the sentences that begin now more than ever, and then they'll continue with why your organization is important. And the second is your opportunity to share your beneficiary's perspective. That is to help your donor see the world and see this scenario, what's going on here, through someone else's eyes. I want you to think about this as if it were an exercise in empathy, because the job for all your donors is to get them to see something beyond their own experience. Let me give you a couple of examples. I literally got this email as I was preparing this presentation. This is from a nonprofit in the Boston area called Families First. And I just loved the structure of their email. And so I put the arrows in to show you. Number 1, they say, our team is working diligently to continue supporting families. I love it. They're already doing the work that they need to be doing. Second, they list 4 bullet points. We're maintaining contact. We're launching a new web page. We're joining forces with other partners, and we're rolling out new online videos. Action-oriented. There's no rocket science in this. This was easy stuff for them to do, but it shows that they're already moving in the right direction. And their third paragraph, I think, is brilliant. Because of our network of supporters, we are able to pivot quickly. I want you to notice that this email, this first one that they sent, didn't even have an ask in it. Instead, it went to the donors and it said, we're already doing this on your behalf. And that's got to give a donor some feeling of confidence in what's going on. Here is another point I want to make, that desperation is a choice. And I'm going to read to you, I'm not going to tell you who the organization is because I really don't want to shame them. It's an arts organization. But I read a press release, and this is what they said publicly. And I won't even tell you the dollar amount. I just don't want to localize it. They quote, "It's difficult to predict how much we'll lose, so we're mounting a multi-million-dollar emergency campaign for lost revenue and sunk expense." Now, let me get this straight. Everyone has lost revenue, everyone has sunk expense, and no one can predict how much they're going to lose. This is a universal message. So why would you put this message out when everyone already knows it? And I'm not saying that you should never put a message of desperation out. I'm just saying that you have to be really strategic about when and where and in front of whom you're putting it out, because nobody's need to get money inspires anyone else's need to give money. People give for a cause. They don't necessarily give out of desperation. But look, I've run arts organizations, and I've been there on payroll when, we didn't have the cash and we needed the help. And so I understand the desperation, but desperation is a choice, and use it sparingly. Similar to this, I also suggest in this moment avoiding binary choices. If you send out a fundraising ask to someone and it's a simple yes or no question, then the no kind of stands as a no as if it were forever. But how about giving them more chances to say yes? So instead of just, will you give once or will you give on a monthly basis, which are kind of the basic options, what if it's, I will give in 30 days or in 60 days or in 90 days, or I won't give cash at this time, but I would be happy to volunteer for you now or going forward. In other words, give them a reason to say yes to something so you can continue the dialogue and keep them engaged with how your organization is moving through this. Related to sending messages to all of your donors, and this would go for all of your audiences as well, I want to caution you to watch out for changed sensibilities. So again, while I was preparing this presentation, I got this email from Shutterfly. And the words are beautiful. We face uncertainty. We're in this together. We're grateful to be part of your family. But look at the picture. And I just wonder, did anyone just stop and look at the picture and go, it just seems a little out of touch with the current moment? No one's looking at this picture and thinking anything other than, I wonder what kind of germs and viral load is in those hands that are going, from person to person, from kid to kid. My point is, when you're ready to send out an email campaign, or if you're doing direct mail or whatever, take a breath, take a pause, and run that campaign in front of a couple of people who are your spouse or friends, people who are disassociated from the work that you're doing, and just ask the question, are we missing something here? Is there anything here that's just obviously out of touch? Because you know that there are. Okay, task number 7, we have to start getting smarter. And I mean a lot smarter. We have our Survey Monkey, we have our online kind of capabilities. This is the perfect time to be asking your donors and asking your audience members on a periodic basis 3 basic questions. The first is, how are you doing? I mean, just give them a simple 1 to 5 scale where 5 is great and 1 is terrible. And if people are generally responding in the 1 and 2 range, that's important to know. I'm suggesting that you don't survey all of your donors at the same time. Instead, I would suggest that you survey 5 or maybe 10% of them every couple of weeks or every month, because 6 months from now, it would be really useful to look back at the separate surveys that you've conducted and say, hey, back in April, there were a lot of people who were feeling 2 and 3, but by September, October, people are really feeling more 3 and 4 in this moment. We're looking for that movement over time. That makes us smarter. A good question to ask your donors is, from your perspective, what makes our mission especially important now? And leave an open space for them to give you fresh testimonials. Those are testimonials that you can use in future fundraising endeavors, but at least they're of the moment and they're timely. The reason that's so valuable is when you watch TV now and you see commercials that were obviously produced 2 or 3 or 4 months ago or longer, they feel stale, right? They feel out of touch because they're still showing people in restaurants and in theaters and shaking hands and doing all the things that we're not doing right now. So your testimonials need to be this current as well. It's also not a bad idea just to ask your donors that same open-ended question: where else do you see priority for our services? Get them to focus on something bigger and something beyond themselves that you might be able to be a part of as well. This is task number 8. I'll be honest with you, I wish I had a better task number 8 for you. It's don't give up, because there are some parts of the engagement that you have to do that there's just not a quick fix for. You have special event goers. They were coming to galas and golf tournaments and whatever else you were doing. And those relationships were going to be fun events for those donors. And now you want to see if they're going to give you the money anyway, which means that you have to shift them from fun expectations to a caring mode. And that's not the easiest thing to do. It's why I put this picture of this rough road, because you are driving down this road. And I'm sorry to say there is no way to get through this road without getting muddy. And my message to you is simply don't give up. You have the same challenge with foundations and other kinds of grant makers. Look, there's a lot of very generous funders out there who have added additional monies, who have taken restrictions off. You just need to be part of a dialogue with your funders to see if they're willing to do that as well. Perhaps share with them examples of what's being done by other funders and see if you can inspire them in the right direction. But you know what? This is golden rule. They have the gold. They make the rules. So again, just have a helpful dialogue. And for your audiences, obviously, many of you are looking for ways to convert those ticket sales to contributions, or at least to defer the ticket sales to a rescheduled event or to next season. My simple advice, again, don't give up. I don't have a best practice for you, but don't presume the charitable intent. Remember, those people bought their tickets expecting to have a fun time and an entertainment. Even a gesture to keep them entertained, a video that you can post, something that says we're offering you some value, is actually a gesture in the right direction here. But keep looking for something, but don't give up. Task number 9 is about making space for your vision statement. This is not just for your mental health, this is for the mental health of your organization. Look, every nonprofit I know has a mission statement. Not every single one has gone so far as to craft a vision statement, but this might be a really good moment to come back to what is your organization's vision statement. In fact, I'll even ask you this. If you would, if you know your vision statement, not the mission statement, but if you know your organization's vision statement, I would love for you to put it into the chat function here on Zoom, and we'll come back in the Q&A and maybe we'll take a look at some of those and we'll use them as examples. So yeah, if you have your vision statement, you want to enter it into the chat, I would love to see it there. But hey, the mission statement is your core purpose that unifies your priorities. The vision statement is that ultimate achievement. So if we were the Alzheimer's Association, the mission is very programmatic. We're going to end Alzheimer's by global research and risk reduction and early detection and quality care. But the vision is that uplifting thing. It just says a world without Alzheimer's. And if we're the California Arts Council, for example, our mission is about strengthening arts and creative expression as tools to cultivate a better California, which is great downward energy. But the upward statement, the upward vision, is a California where all people flourish with access to and participation in the arts. So my point to you is, just like we prune back a rose bush sometimes, we have to cut off the pretty branches and get back to the nubs. Your vision statement is the place where you get to say, look, our mission, the way we affect our mission may be different in this moment. Maybe we can't do all the programs that we've been doing and that are dearly important. I'm not saying it's not important, that it's not painful. But when we can focus on our vision statement, even if we can just do it for 12 minutes a day, we come back to the question of, okay, is there something else that we can do in this moment, in these raw times, that makes us feel good because we're at least advancing the mission of our organization? Here's task number 10. Please remember the things that haven't changed from your donor's perspective, the reasons they give to your organization. They give because they have confidence in you, make a difference, you do something that they think is personally significant to them, and they feel connected. These things haven't changed. If the Godfather was the development director for your organization, the Godfather, I can't do the Godfather imitation, but the Godfather would say, it's not personal, it's business. But the Godfather would have been a lousy fundraiser, because in fundraising, we know that people give because it's personal and it's business. But keep your eye on the Godfather at this moment, because in 3, 2, 1, I'm going to flip him. And now I want to recognize that I reversed the photo, because we have to respect what has changed in this moment. And from your donor's perspective, their capacity, their urgency, their sense of priorities, and even their loyalty to your organization is all affected. And a reverse Godfather quote is actually quite useful, which is, your donors still love you, they still respect you. It's not personal that they might choose not to give in this moment. It's just personal. So let's not get down on them for that. Task number 11, we have to ask better questions. And I challenge you right now today to go back through all the communications that have come out from your organization over the last couple of months now, and ask, is your organization positioned merely as the beneficiary of your community's generosity? If your outbound messages have all been of the nature of help us, help us, help us, then you are positioned merely as the beneficiary of your community's generosity. A better question in this moment is to ask, what is your organization's opportunity to contribute to the recovery and health and collaborative spirit of your community? That's not a help us message. That's a how can we help message. This is the same triangulation where we go, donor, we're not asking just you to support us. We're saying, can we all identify a need out there that we can help with? We want to help do that. Do you want to help do that? Because if you want to help do that and we'll help do that, you're donating to us makes that happen. Got it? Okay. We're into the final task here. This is task number 12, which is all about taking collaborative action. And I make the point that we are stronger together. In fact, Julie, I'm going to ask you to come back into the conversation for a quick second, because I always make the point that we are stronger together, and now is the time to prove it. But we were talking ahead of time, and you had a really interesting point from Californians for the Arts that really speaks to this, and you should mention it right here.
You bet. Yeah, no, I mean, our job is to make sure that the public sector, including our elected officials, are aware of what's happening to everyone who's working within the arts and creative sector, and that it's really important that we share our stories. And in our case, we just did a big virtual arts advocacy day last week, and a couple of things came out, which one of them from the legislators was keep it local. Make sure your message is local. In other words, we need to share our stories to our elected officials within our district and tell them what's happening within our own organizations. And in that case, they are in a sense a donor, right? I mean, it's
Absolutely.
public funding. It's one of the mechanisms in which we are funding the arts and creative sectors. So I think in that, everything you said is absolutely right, which is not just we need help, give us money, right? Because everybody in the state of California needs help and needs money. So the answer, the subject matter of your letter to an elected official right now is exactly what you just talked about, which is what are we doing? How are we pivoting right now to continue to provide services and acknowledging what's happening in our state in terms of public health and safety? How are the arts contributing to that right now? And at the same time, illustrating why we also are in need of public support. So
and Julie, you're going to send some resources out. You've got some sample text and contact information and things that people can use.
Absolutely. We're going to actually create a template for this letter that will be going out next week.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. We'll come back at the end for the Q&A parts. I bet people will want to talk more about that as well. The point that I want to also make about Stronger Together is whether you've gotten together with Californians for the Arts or SV Creates or Arts OC or Theater Bay Area or any of the other associations that you may belong to, this would be a wonderful time to pull out a roster and call someone who you've met or who you've known from a prior engagement at some other organization somewhere else in the state, and just check in with them. How are you doing? What challenges are you running into? How can you buddy up with someone else and make each other smarter along the way? I've already heard of organizations where someone had already graphic designed something and written something, and they just managed to share it with another organization and save them precious days and expense in trying to create something on their own. You know, the bottom line of all of this is my quote here, that the future is unknowable, but it's certainly malleable, which means that you have the ability right now to make all kinds of efforts that are going to have magnitudes of changes going forward. To this same point about taking collaborative action, I've been teaching this webinar literally all over the country and for all kinds of nonprofit organizations, not just arts and culture. So I created a Facebook group. You can find it if you go to Facebook and just type in crisis engagement or look for crisis engagement for nonprofit organizations. We're up to like 180 folks right now. And if you just want a place to share some of your best practices or ask other people of what they're doing, even if you're learning, even if others are learning from things that didn't quite work for you, it should be a really valuable place to go and have an online conversation. Okay, final point. I want to end with the same place that we started at task one, the mantra of inward, outward, forward. I think the point I want to make here is the current crisis requires that we can't be together right now. We have to wait. We don't know for how long. And tragically, that means that many of our organizations are specifically prevented from delivering upon our missions, and we're incapable of serving people who probably need our help now more than ever. But we will certainly get back to work. And on that day, those people are going to need our help, and they're going to need our services more than ever. And that means that even if we have to hold off on providing those services, the one thing that we can't hold off on today is reaching out to all of our donors, our current donors, our past donors, our friends, every audience member, every supporter. And they need to know that their support today, right now, is essential to our ability to get back to work tomorrow. And their decision to make a contribution is the proof that nobody needs to wait even a single moment to start improving the world for someone. Now, for those of you who have fundraising responsibilities, you are the front line of efforts to get your organizations back to work as soon as possible. I've shared 12 tasks, but let's not overthink this. Your donors know what's going on, and your job is simply to give them the opportunity to say yes. So we're done with the 12 tasks. It's time to get back to work. I'll invite Julie back in to help moderate the Q&A. I can see that there's some Q&As and a whole bunch of stuff in the chat. Let me just, in closing, just mention, if you want a copy of all of my slides, take out your cell phone and text the word tasks to 66866. And what you'll get back is a link to download the PDF. You'll also get a link to the Facebook group. I'll send you a link to my little news story about my 10 neighbors, which is just kind of fun. And lastly, I'll send you an evaluation form that, among other things, is going to ask you, if we had 24 minutes more, what else would you want to talk about? I'd really love to hear your thoughts about that as well. So that's it. Julie, back to you.
Hey there. I was actually texting you. So hold on. 66866
and text the word task.
And then say tasks. All right.
And then you'll get a bounce back message that asks you for your email address.
I have this too. So there we go. Awesome. Thank you, Matt. That was fantastic. And it was so efficient. And, you know, as you said in the beginning, it's not necessarily things that we haven't necessarily thought about, but the way you framed it was so clear and so helpful. So thank you for that. We really, really appreciate it.
I'm glad.
I want to see, right now we don't have any questions yet. So if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box, but I've got a couple.
Okay.
So Matt, if I could, I will go ahead and ask those of you. One of the things I just wanted to also, I thought a couple of takeaways too, which I think are important, which is in terms of the safeguarding our donor management system, and also sort of putting an intention to that, I think is what you're also saying. I thought it was interesting too to think about cross-training, as you mentioned, at this time, you know, where maybe it is a time where normally in your organization, one person really knows that data system, right? And maybe now is the time to teach others about this data system. Would you agree that this is a good time to maybe do some internal training?
Internal training, absolutely. And while you're doing that internal training, this is the perfect time to review your accounting policies or write them for the first time if you've never done that before. I mean, everyone's sitting at home looking for the productive stuff to do. What a great time to write the policies that you need to be adhering by. It's a great refresher for everyone for the way things work. And I should mention, you know, I called an accountant, an auditor who works with nonprofit arts organizations in particular. And I asked him this question. I said, you know, going in, I said, imagine the end of this year, if you're an auditor, you know, what are you going to be looking for in this moment? And the point that he makes is a lot of nonprofit arts organizations are already thin staffed, and they don't have all the checks and balances that you know, a really large sophisticated organization would have. So this is an even greater opportunity for risk and vulnerability than usual. So, you know, he just says, you know, there's no downside to slowing down a little bit and looking at the policies and making sure that you have them. And if you're going to adapt them in this moment, to write down what those policies are that you're using in this moment so that an auditor can come back later and see what it is that you did. You used the word intentionality, and I think that's exactly the right word here. A lot of us put our donor management on autopilot. We don't want to think about that because we hire people to do that or volunteer. This is such an important part of what we're doing. And if for no other reason, we just don't want to be in a situation a month from now or 6 months from now where we're in the news because that vulnerability exposed something and it turned into a loss or an embezzlement or just sloppiness. And you made decisions off of wrong information, and you can kill your organization just because you're sloppy in this moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all doing it in our homes, right? We're cleaning our drawers, as it were, right? I think I've never had so many clean drawers in my home. And I think in a sense, it's kind of what we need to do with our own organizations, which is you're cleaning your house, right? You take this time to really make sure that systems are in place.
Absolutely.
There is a great question here from Julie Pokluski. Assuming all correspondence with donors has been done via email, can it remain that way, or do you still suggest a phone call?
Okay, so that's a really good question. I want to split this up. If we're talking about the large donors, that 80-20 rule, and everyone understands the 80-20 rule. It's the same one that says 20% of your donors give 80% of your funds, is like the same thing. Like you wear 20% of your clothes 80% of the time, right? Not in this environment. I'm wearing like the same pair of shorts all the time. But other than that, if we're talking about large donors, I would say you need to make that phone call. And if you can get them even on the computer like this, there's just no substitute for that. Email is not a good substitute. If we're talking about all donors, well, that might just depend on your organization and the nature of your relationship with those donors. I would say to the extent that you have a personal relationship with someone, you should pick up the phone and have that conversation with them, because it's human to human contact. And in this moment, we all have to be, again, intentional about reaching out and having those kinds of connections. I've been reaching out to relatives that I haven't talked with in years, because I just want to make sure that they know that I'm thinking about them in this moment. And it's not awkward, because in this moment, all you have to do is say, hey, I was thinking about you, and I just thought I would pick up the phone and give you a call. Your donors, I think, are human and are going to respond to that just as well. But if it turns into a script, if you're talking about assigning everyone on your team to call every donor and to run through this, I would not be inauthentic about that. That doesn't feel quite the same thing.
Yeah, and I think also what you mentioned too, in terms of the positive aspect as well, is so important. Some of the feedback we received last week on Virtual Arts Advocacy Day was that it was positive, that it wasn't doom and gloom. It was looking forward and seeing how we can affect change together. And I think that is part of what people want to hear versus, we're falling apart, help us.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was such a great message. And I have another question here.
Wait, but before you do that, what I love about what you just said was, it means that you were calling up and having a conversation in which you were actually asking people for things. You weren't just calling to tell them. So if we call a donor and just say, hey, we're here and we still need money and we hope you give, that's not as valuable as asking them so what else are you concerned with these days, and understand where they're coming from and see if you can be relevant to their world as opposed to just asking you to be relevant to them.
And yeah, and always ask advice, right? Always helpful.
I love that. The adage is, if you want money, ask for advice. And if you want advice, ask for money.
That's right. All right. So Alex has a question, which another great question. Do you think repetition in your messaging with your patrons and donor base is appropriate? Having the quote, ask for donations in all of your communications?
Julie, we should talk about this a little bit, because I can answer this in a couple of different ways, right? There is the conventional view that says that people give to people who ask. And so that if you don't ask, they're not going to give. And I get that. But I also am afraid of sounding robotic and programmed in this moment. To be authentic to these raw times, which are raw for everyone, it's the reason why it's still compelling to watch the late night TV shows broadcasting from their house with Jimmy, with the Jimmy's kids, crawling all over them, because we're willing to make allowances that this isn't the show, this is an approximation of it. And I think, we shouldn't be so tied down as to making the ask and repeating it in exactly the same way. I think we should be that kind of flexible as well. But Julie, do you have a thought on that for yourself?
I think, like you said, it comes in a variety of ways as well. I think that right now that we've been pleasantly surprised that people have been sending in donations to us without a hard ask. And I think it's based on the work that we're doing. And so it's sort of saying, instead of saying, help us, it's more saying, here's all the things that we're doing, we're trying to address in the sector. And I think people are seeing the value in that. So I think it's coming forward with your value first and what it is that you're giving to your communities, because that is why we are nonprofits, right? We have to always think about what is the benefit we're giving to our community.
I might add one more thing to that, which is the power of collaborative asks. Now, I don't know if Californians for the Arts is doing a specific collaborative campaign, or if SV Creates or Arts OC or Theater Bay Area is, but I'll give you my little example here. I did this webinar for the Alliance of Arizona Nonprofits a couple of weeks ago, and it was right before Arizona Gives Day, the big collaborative thing. The prior record for Arizona Gives Day was $3 million. This year, and this had nothing to do with my webinar, it's just that it happened a little afterwards, but this year they raised $4.5 million in one day of fundraising for all of the participating nonprofits. I just have to imagine that if an arts organization were to partner with other arts organizations in their local communities and put forth a local ask, that would fly at a higher altitude and could have a power to it even greater than what any one organization could do on their own. And I would encourage people to figure out those kinds of collaborations too.
Yeah, I think we're seeing that a lot in communities. There are a lot of relief funds happening. Those are pooled efforts, and they're often a public-private partnership as well, which is terrific. So we are seeing those across the state. But one thing I think, and I've heard this a lot, which is that a number of nonprofit arts organizations do a spring gala, spring fundraising event that was sort of in the works when we all had to shut down. And so how do you approach that? Do you reschedule it for the fall and hope that we can do it in the fall? Do you do some sort of virtual version of it? Do you make an ask saying we thought, we had budgeted for this and therefore we need that? What do you suggest?
Well, again, I'm sitting here in Scottsdale, Arizona. I won't presume to prescribe for anyone specific on what they should do. But generally, if you had obviously, if you had a program where people were going to get together, that's clearly not going to happen. So rescheduling that certainly makes some sense. And we hope that by the fall, there is some ability to gather. We just don't know what that's going to look like. More to the point, if you had an email campaign or a direct mail campaign or any other kind of program in the works, I think the most important thing is to not be tone deaf to this moment. So if you wrote that campaign, if you illustrated it, you put your slide on your photographs, if you did that all 2 months ago or more, then chances are it's stale, it's out of touch. And the only thing worse than sending out no campaign would be sending out a campaign that's going to make people look at it and go, what planet are they on? Or this stuff must have already been printed and postage was already paid for it, and that's why they sent it out, but oh my God, ugh. So I think the most important thing is to be authentic to this moment. So I don't think I would say don't fundraise in this moment. I think I would say fundraise in ways that are relevant. And if it's not relevant, and even if that means that it's going to be a little raw in this moment, that's okay. Authenticity to this moment probably matters a great deal, but being sophisticated and all that is kind of out the window. It's why I can wear t-shirts for business meetings in this moment and no one cares.
Absolutely. And I bet you have great weather in Arizona right now.
Oh, it's phenomenal.
So we do have an interesting question, which I'm going to have to help answer this because it's very specific to California in terms of legislation. So Aaron Renfro asks, our needs or messaging was going to encompass Assembly Bill 5 changes, which will still likely impact our organization quite a bit. Now there's also COVID. That's a lot to react to. Any suggestions on how to message those two impacts simultaneously? So just to give you background quickly, Assembly Bill 5 essentially changed how people determine if someone's an independent contractor or an employee, and essentially made it very difficult for arts organizations to have anyone be an independent contractor, and it defaults to employees. So we've seen tremendous increases across the board for small budget arts organizations to large budget arts organizations in having to change people from independent contractors to employees and the costs associated with that. And so I think what she was saying is that there was a moment where she was sort of essentially they were fundraising based on that concept. We have a gap to fill. Now there's a larger gap because not only do we have that issue, but we've been shut down now and will likely be shut down for a long time, and we have no earned revenues. So I guess they're asking, do you address those, head on, or would you suggest?
Well, if the original plan was we're going to do fundraising because AB5 has changed our cost structure and we need help to cover this, if that's still true, and that feels like it's really relevant to your organization and your audiences would really care about that, then I would say, by all means, talk about it. But I think I would ask the question a little differently, which is for each organization to answer on their own. I'm not going to prescribe. But on a scale of 1 to 10, if coronavirus is a 10, it's probably a 50. But, but if that's an urgency level or criticality at 10, the AB5 issue as a piece of that is at what number? And if it's less than an 8 for any organization, I might just think that might be not something to wear on your sleeve at this moment. People are going to look at that and they go, they're complaining about AB5 when we're dealing with coronavirus? That seems out of sync.
Thank you. I've got another question.
Oh, go ahead.
Did you?
I was going to say, yeah. There's a related point to this that I often get, which is, is it okay to wear when is it okay to wear desperation on our sleeve? And I just want to say this point. I ran a theater company, and I knew what it was like to not have cash on payday, and it was a big organization, and we fortunately had a donor who we could call at the last minute, who with an hour's notice could cover a payroll, which was amazing. And not every organization is blessed with those kinds of resources. My point about desperation is I very rarely want to wear desperation on my sleeve in front of everyone, because my fear is that if I send a message out to all of my donors, some large number, very few of them are in a position to actually cure the problem. And most of them are going to think, well, gee, if they can't fix that problem, then I'm spending good money after bad, and I don't really want to do that. It might actually be poisoning the well that you're going to. If you really are that desperate, then you need to send that message of desperation to only the 1 or 2 or 3 donors who are actually in a position to do something about it, and where you can have a direct personal conversation with them. And if they can help you, great. And if you don't have anyone like that, I still don't love the idea of an all points bulletin desperation notice. I fear that's what that's going to do.
And as you said, I think especially right now with so much fear and doom and gloom and negativity, that can be what is coming in our lives, that coming out with a message that is not necessarily saying how we are adapting and how we're doing something positive to continue to provide our services, but instead, here's our giant gap that needs to be funded, help us, may not be the best approach. And I love that concept that you're calling the top donors instead, with people you have a relationship with, you really understand it. So that makes a lot of sense. So here's from an anonymous attendee. What advice can you give for an organization that wants to be genuine about offering support to the community beyond our typical offerings? I want to be genuine about offering support, but we are a fairly small organization, no staff, all volunteers, and I'm afraid to overcommit to something we can't do. Where's the line?
Oh, I love this question. And finally, this is the question that I was hoping we would get to when I talked about your vision statement and why your vision statement is so valuable for you in this moment. So I'm thumbing back through the chat and I'm looking at some of the vision statements. So I'm just going to pull one at random that I just saw because it's short. Patty O'Reilly wrote, "The vision of the Sonoma Conservatory of Dance is a world filled with inspired and inspiring people developing and using their talents for good." I'm just going to say it again. I love this vision statement. A world filled with inspired and inspiring people developing and using their talents for good. Now, I imagine, because you're a conservatory of dance, that by and large, they think that the talents they're talking about using for good are their dance talents. But to the person who just asked this question, what do we do that's appropriate to this moment? Use your talents for good in your community at the moment. So again, I don't know where the Sonoma Conservatory of Dance is, but just imagining that it has a facility and it's on a block that has a grocery store or a couple of restaurants or some other businesses that are essential services still in this moment. How about using your talents for good by inspiring people, by helping your neighbors there, by showing up and saying, hey, in this moment, we're going to show up and we're going to help you with your curbside delivery. We're going to help you stock your shelves. These are things that we can do to be good neighbors in this moment. I know it's not dance, but the point is, at some point, we're going to get back to business, and wouldn't it be wonderful for then that restaurant and that grocery store to then know you better and be of service to you going forward as well? I believe that you could take, and we can do this some more if you want. We can go back through all the vision statements here and we can pull out some nub of it that says, if this is our vision, if this is what we are really about, inspired and inspiring people, then we should find a way to do that in this moment, because we can't dance together. There is still something that we can do that is authentic to who we are as artists, as performers, and as members of this community.
And I think a lot about this in talking to colleagues too, which is how critical arts nonprofits are as just social service providers in their communities, right, in general. So, and I think a lot of us are pivoting right now to just be a connection for our community. And that might just be a place where you actually are helping someone to understand how to file for unemployment. I mean, it could be some of those sorts of things where it's like, let's not forget how much you are a trusted source in your community, right? And you are providing that connection, and particularly in smaller communities, I think that's really true. But those people trust you. So I think thinking about how that is important right now is in what we can be doing that may not be providing art services, but providing community services, as you were saying.
It's true to our vision, and sometimes we just have to pivot and offer, and fulfill our vision in new and creative ways. And that doesn't mean you have to do this permanently, forever. It just means in this moment, this is fulfilling and this is valuable in our community.
Absolutely. So let's see if there's I don't have any other real questions at this time. And I think there's a new message. Let's see if there's anything. Nope, just a thank you all. So I think we're getting to about almost at 11 here, Matt. So I want to thank you so much, and want to thank our co-sponsors and presenters on this, SV Creates, Theater Bay Area, and Arts Orange County, for bringing you to California virtually.
Happy to do it.
Happy to have you here, and it was really, really informative. So thank you so much. It definitely got my brain thinking too. I just wrote down some names of people I need to call.
Fantastic. I look forward to talking to you again, Julie. Thank you all very much. I appreciate the opportunity. Everyone stay safe, stay home.
Thank you. Take care.